Hello, my name's John Sanfilippo. I run a business in Kingston, Ontario called Tyton Sound. Pretty much everything that Tyton does can fall under one of two categories. There's audio branding and audio production. Now, audio production is mostly self-explanatory. That includes a number of things such as recording, usually just recording of voiceovers. Lots of voiceover these days. That's a big part of the business. Automated dialogue replacement, also known as ADR, basically dubbing. For example, a couple of months ago, we were approached by this agency in Toronto to do an ADR session. They had shot this aspirin commercial, and it was shot in this very busy hospital environment, so there was a lot of noise on their audio track. So what they did was they sent the talent over to us. We re-recorded all of her dialogue in studio and send it back, and they just have to drop it in, and in the end, you get a very polished product. In the past, we've done sound design, custom sound effects for film, video, apps, games, that sort of thing, as well as audiobooks. Something we haven't really got into that much, but well within our realm of ability is podcasts. And in the last couple of years, we've gotten into audio mastering in a big way, specifically for video. People that do video, for them, audio is last on the list. They're very concerned with getting all the shots right, getting the edits right. So it makes sense to send it to a company that does sound exclusively. And of course, we have lots of tools that are unavailable to most video producers, so we can really take it to a place where most producers can't. So they can actually send us their audio session. We can open it in Pro Tools, and from there we can mix, edit, process, whatever we need to do. And in the end, you get a very polished product, both in terms of the sights and the sound. So it's great to be able to kind of cross disciplines and get the most out of both of them. Now, I'd like to play just a quick game with you. We'll just play some audio and just see if you can figure out what it represents. So that one's pretty easy. That's McDonald's. They've been running that for well over a decade now. McDonald's has always been very well branded, both visually and with sound. Next one. And that, of course, is HBO. And just one more, a little bit harder. And that, of course, is Rogers. So those are all examples of audio branding. Specifically, those are audio logos. We'll talk about those in just a moment. Now, most people understand visual branding. You've got a consistent logo, you've got familiar colors, fonts, that sort of thing. My job is to take that existing brand and bring it into the realm of sound. Audio branding is tricky. In fact, working in the business of sound is very tricky. People tend to grasp sights much better than they do sounds. Sights are very obvious. They're very in your face much of the time. Sound is a little more elusive, and this is even evidenced by just the way we consume media. Video is widely available in high def and even 4K in some places. Audio is often presented in compressed formats and played quite often on one of the worst sounding music players available, being the smartphone. So as a result, audio tends to be very much in the background of people's lives. Not always, but quite often. It's on while they're doing other things. They're driving, they're cooking, they're at work. And this isn't necessarily a disadvantage. It's just something that needs to be understood in order to reach people effectively. And what we want to do is engage the passive audience. You need to be able to reach people on an almost subconscious level. And one of the biggest mistakes that writers and producers make is they write and produce with this idea that the audience is hanging off their every word. But quite frankly, they're not. As we said, they're doing other things. They're going about their lives. So engaging the passive audience. Now, I often find myself explaining auditory concepts using visual analogies. And this will be the first of a few, I think, over the course of this little presentation. Engaging the passive audience, trying to reach people on that almost subconscious level. All that media that's out there already, all that noise trying to get your attention. It's like a bunch of people trying to get into a busy club. There's just one door, there's a huge line around the block. Reaching people on this subconscious level is like sneaking in the back door. They didn't necessarily hear you come in. They don't necessarily know that you're there right away. But you're there, and they're going to know that you're there. Now, 2 out of 5 businesses have no idea how their brand sounds, and 1 out of 5 have any kind of audio brand to speak of. So let's look at a few audio branding tools that are available. Now, the simplest is probably simply a brand voice, or a spokesperson, if you will. And this is just a voice that becomes associated with your brand. And if you're new to audio branding, you need to ask yourself, what type of voice is going to fit our brand? Do we want something sort of more serious and authoritative? Do we want something bright and fun? Now with Tyton, we've got about a couple dozen voiceover people available to us, and most of them are local to Kingston, and this is done very deliberately. There are certainly a lot of people doing voiceover work these days. It's very easy to find voices online. One of the disadvantages is the inconsistency in both performance and sound quality. Often you don't really know what's happening on the other end. There are no real standards for equipment. In the audio world, there's a lot of equipment that claims to be professional or studio equipment, but most of the time it doesn't really mean anything. So you never really know what you're going to get. Here we're not only able to control the quality and the environment, but I kind of double as not just the technical producer, but also voice coach / director. I've been working with voice people for many, many years, and I've gotten very good at getting the right performance out of people. And worth noting, I also just have a relationship with all of these voiceover people. So I know what they can do, I know what I can get out of them, and I know what they're capable of. So if you need a certain voice, I'm able to say this person or possibly this person would do that very, very well. Musical branding. This is probably the best way to reach people on that passive level that we're talking about. And there's a couple tools we can use to do that. There's a jingle, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically just a song that brands your business. And then there's the audio logo. We heard a few of those earlier, which is basically just a jingle without singing. Now, musical branding is probably the best way to reach people on a passive level. It works very much like a hit song does now. Now, the music industry has undergone many, many changes in the last 20, 15, even 10 years. One way in which it has changed is back in the day, a song was played often because it was popular. Today, the inverse is very much true. A song isn't played often because it's popular. A song is popular because it's played often. And musical branding works the exact same way. It doesn't necessarily have to be catchy, it doesn't necessarily have to be in your face. It needs to be prevalent, it needs frequency. Because when it does, it becomes part of people's lives. It becomes part of the public consciousness. It becomes top of mind. And at the very least, if it is catchy, you've got free commercials all day in people's heads. And one of the great things about musical branding is how you can kind of cross media and integrate it into the visuals. If you've got, you can animate your logo sort of in time with the music. Just a great sort of confluence of media and skills that really drives it home. Professionally voiced phone elements. Now, this refers to pretty much anything that's not live. So that would include your auto attendant, on-hold messaging, voicemail greetings. And what we want to do is just make a bigger impression. To make a visual analogy, once again, if you have, say, a storefront or an office, you do everything you can to make it inviting, make it professional. Usually there's a friendly person there to greet people. If people call you, what are they going to hear? Are they going to hear a friendly voice that suits your brand? Or are they going to hear a receptionist or IT person who didn't want to do the recording? And the great thing about this is if you have existing audio branding elements, pretty much all of those elements can be incorporated into your phone system, whether you have jingle You have branded music, voice, whatever. And it's also a great opportunity to promote yourself as well and to extend your brand that much further. If you have to put people on hold, ideally, we don't ever have to put people on hold, but it is kind of a necessary evil. Eventually, we got to put somebody on hold. If we do put them on hold, what are they going to hear? Beeps are annoying. Silence is confusing. Some older systems might default to the radio, which might play an ad for your competition, so that's not particularly smart either. If somebody's on hold, let's assume they're on hold for about 30 seconds. That's the same length of time as a typical commercial. So why not use that time? If you've got their attention, use it. Promote yourself, educate them, talk to them, entertain them, whatever. And that's the other thing. You can get creative. There's probably things you can do with that 30 seconds that no one's ever even thought of before. Worth noting, 68% of people are on hold for more than a minute. And 73% of them won't do business with you again if their call isn't handled properly. So who needs an audio brand? It's not necessarily for everyone, but certainly worth considering and certainly an asset if you produce regular promo videos. Again, if you engage people over the phone on a regular basis. If you produce podcasts or apps. If you have some sort of public address, great to have a consistent spokesperson. And of course, if you have TV ads or internet pre-roll ads, definitely an asset, great way to integrate the sounds with the visuals. If you produce radio ads, this is basically essential. If your brand resides mostly in the visual realm, so you've got consistent colors, fonts, logos all across the board, none of that carries over into your radio ad. I don't know what it's like in other markets, but I know in Kingston there are many businesses who have advertised for years, some for decades, without any audio brand to speak of. It's really hard to make an impact on radio without any consistent audio branding elements. It's like, imagine every time you did a TV ad, you would have to change your logo every time. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've been involved in. Now, I know certain Communo members were involved in the Home Depot marketing portal, and we were as well. We did the voiceovers for those. And probably worth noting, we did not really a branding element, but we did the audio mastering for the pro referral videos as well. On the provincial level, we've been working with Shoreline's casinos for the last several months. And they've been great to work with. They've got a great brand. Their visual brand is great, and their audio brand is just as strong. We've been doing their radio ads as well as the audio component to their TV ads. So we've been providing a consistent voice. They've got a jingle. Everything's in place. And that's been a great relationship. I'm really curious to see how that grows in the next several months and maybe years. And on the local level, yes, we did jingle for the Sexy store in Kingston for Pleasure Island, the adult fun store. And this was an interesting one because they wanted to do TV and we're kind of struggling because a lot of the stuff they wanted to put on TV, you couldn't really show on TV. So they've been doing some radio, but it didn't have any consistency. You could have inserted the name of any other adult store and it would have made just as much sense. So we got connected with them and we ended up producing a jingle. And it was tricky because they didn't want to come across as being sort of sleazy. They want to be known for being classy, knowledgeable, fun, inviting. And that was all reflected in the jingle. We knew that when we produced the jingle, we all agreed we didn't want to do the usual waka cha waka sort of stuff. So the jingle that we did produce, it was fun, it was quirky, it was a bit sexy, it was catchy, and it just worked. Now they're top of mind, their brand is built in, they're opening another location, and it's fun, these little stories that come out too when a jingle does become sort of prevalent and becomes part of the public consciousness. I was talking with the owner and she said they did a booth at a wedding show, and she caught people walking past and singing and humming the jingle. There was a friend of mine who was mortified that one of her children was singing the jingle, so that was kind of fun too. So just a few notes about the process of working with Tyton. It's all pretty flexible, actually. We've worked with a lot of different companies and a lot of sort of stages of development. We've worked with some companies who had a very clear vision of how they wanted their audio brand to be. So in that case, we serve more as a producer and facilitator. And then there are other companies who have never approached this kind of thing before. And in that case, we can take more of a leadership role and really guide them to crafting their brand and figuring out how that's all going to come together. And if you are new to audio branding, what we can do is an audio audit. And this is where we'll look at all your media and find out where there's opportunity to brand yourself with sound or to improve sounds that already exist. We've always been pretty good at doing samples. Again, it's tricky working in sound because people don't tend to grasp sounds as well as they do sights. So it's much easier to not only just sell the product, but to really gain some confidence with the client when it becomes less this hypothetical thing and becomes a little more tangible and a little more immediate. So for example, in the past, we've had clients say, hey, we're not sure about this voice or this one. Could you give us some samples? And our voice people, they're usually pretty good. If we say, hey, would you mind just reading a few sentences? They're usually cool with just coming in and just giving a sample. And again, that just makes the whole process so much easier. And we've even done that with jingles in the past. Again, it's just so much easier to move forward when you've got a clearer idea of how this is going to play out. Now, worth noting with jingles, there is a contract to sign. It's pretty straightforward. It deals mostly with copyright. Now, one final thought. This is what I call the audio brand challenge. Now, when examining an audio brand or creating one, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. First of all, is it going to resonate with the passive listener? In other words, can someone not be paying direct attention and still know it's you? And this is going to take time. Audio branding takes a while. It's just like visual branding. It doesn't happen overnight, but eventually people will recognize the sound of you as well as they do the visual component to your brand. Now, the big challenge, does it still work without your name? In other words, can you remove your name from your branding elements and still be recognized? Now, if you're a new business, this isn't going to work right away. But if you brand yourself consistently and well and frequently, people will know it's you. They're going to know by the voice, they'll know by the music, the tone, just the overall vibe. They're going to know. Now again, visual analogies. The visual equivalent to this is taking a visual logo and simply removing the name. And we don't need to play the guessing game here. These are all pretty obvious. Now, if your logo is your name, then it becomes simply a matter of rearranging the letters and seeing if it's still recognizable. And once again, pretty easy. I just kind of Googled logo parody and this is what I got. Now, for the sake of brevity, I left out playing audio except for the little game at the beginning, but there's a lot of content on tytonsound.com. I urge you to check it out and give it a look/listen. Lots of fun material on there and maybe a few things that you've heard before. And that's pretty much it. If you want to learn more or if you are interested in pursuing audio branding, go to tytonsound.com and give us a shout.